After the Falcons lost to Pittsburgh, you said they were done. When Philly lost to Atlanta in embarrassing fashion, you said the season is over. The Bengals have lost 3 straight games to New England, to the Chiefs, the game you felt great about, and you thought that would be the changing point of the season. Panic meter 0, Baltimore 6. And then you
Baltimore's
played
a 5, I believe.
You played Washington. You lost. The defense gave up 30 points, 38 if I'm not mistaken. It was pretty bad. Then you brought up these stats on Fantasy Reaction. How only 6 teams since 1970, some old shit like that. 6 teams since 1979.
1970.
It was crazy, like some mad far thing. And you think the Bengals can do it. I would love to know, why do you feel like they can do it? Because I feel like you've panicked so fast and you've given up so fast on these other teams. What's the difference between this team, which I understand Joe Burrow's great. I'm not saying he's not. I understand Jamar Chase is 100% back. But that defense is so fucking bad that I just don't see a world where they can do it. Crawl out the mud, 0-3. They gave up 38 points. Jaden Daniels was literally flawless. He had a record day. And then you talked about week 1, how Gesicki drops. The offense just couldn't get no push. There's a lot of drop passes, penalties, all this stuff. So the offense has, been struggling, but they had their breakout game against Washington's defense. So what's the... Outside of Joe Burrow, because obviously you can easily grab that and gravitate towards that.
Because here's the thing. He has nothing else other than Joe Burrow.
I need something else.
There's nothing else.
For a stat that's 6 teams since 1979, I wasn't thought of, that 6 teams have made the playoffs starting 0-3. I need something bigger than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I really do. So
first of all, I love that you introduced me as a Joe Burrow guy, not a Bengals guy.
Sure.
Because when it comes to your Eagles, my team and your Eagles got the same record. The New York Jets, we're both 2-1 right now. The New York Jets, we're on the upswing.
We are too.
I know. I'm saying we're both 2-1 right now. We got an even record. And some of your other teams not doing so well, like the Cleveland Browns.
Well, the Bills are 3-0.
Whoa. I dropped them. I did.
And the Steelers are 3-0 also.
Do you have a tweet for the NFL?
That's his team now?
And Justin Fields, it counts.
I'm just
Justin Fields, it counts.
I'm just...
Wow. All the shit you talk. Damn! All the shit you talk on John.
I thought he would have claimed.
Nope. I claim Riv as a Steeler fan. What?
John, look at me.
What is this? There you go.
I claim him as a Steeler fan. It's fine with me.
But okay,
that's true.
But I'm not a Pittsburgh fan though. I'm not.
The Browns no more. The Bills, the Texans, the Eagles.
Yes, those
the
three.
49ers.
I'm just a Purdy fan. I've stood on that forever.
My 49ers take not looking crazy.
Calm the hell down.
They're injured.
They suck.
You're a casual.
They suck.
They beat you by 30.
They got lucky.
They bent you over and said,
if we played them next week, who's winning?
They're hurt. Yeah, obviously.
And Rodgers' first week off Achilles.
You thought you would win.
We should have.
If we face the 49ers now, I think
I'm still taking the Niners.
On
my mother's life.
Stop the cap.
On my mother's life, I'm taking the Niners. Yes, I am.
I do want to say before you go in your monologue, I don't have an NFL tweet because I am not the same in the NBA. I have 2.5 teams. I have the Eagles, I have the Bills, and I am a CJ Stroud Glazer. So therefore,
not even a fan.
I'm very invested in what they do.
What about Purdy?
I love Purdy, but I'm not. I wouldn't consider.
You're not
that doesn't count for another half.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider because I'd really be invested in what Houston do. I didn't care if Ayuk was there or not. I just really wanted, I'm just excited to see Purdy. Debo's hurt. I love Purdy. That's it.
I love Debo.
Now here's the thing. I mentioned that 1979 stat on the Fantasy Reaction Show. Since 1990,
have you figured out the team?
162 teams have started out 0-3. Only 4 of them have made the playoffs. We're pushing up the timeline. Since 2000, only 1 has done it. Now, here's why the Bengals have some things in their favor. Those teams did not have the luxury of having an extra game in the season, and those teams did not have the luxury of having an extra wild card spot heading into the playoffs.
That matters.
I look at the AFC playoff picture. The Bills, the Chiefs, the New York Jets, the Houston Texans, and the 3-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. Outside of those 5 teams, who are the next 2 teams that you think could make the playoffs?
Baltimore.
I would say the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals if I would have to put money on it. I don't trust the Denver Broncos. The Miami Dolphins with Tua. We don't know how severe his injury is and when he's going to come back.
You had Chargers getting in, brother.
Justin Herbert has a high ankle
let
sprain, and he just dealt with a foot injury in the offseason. So Justin Herbert's health, if he's not healthy, the Chargers season is done. It's wrapped up. The Jaguars are a mess. The Colts, Anthony Richardson is too inconsistent. There is a lot of bad teams in the AFC, and that's why I think the Bengals still have a shot. And when I look at the Bengals, usually in the past, their slow starts have been due to the offense not being good. The Bengals' offense has been incredible. Joe Burrow has 5 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. All 3 of their losses have been one-score losses. They lost 16-10 to the Patriots. They lost to the Chiefs. A defensive pass interference is why they lost to the Chiefs. Could have very well went on the road and beat them. And against the Commanders, they played great offensively. Some drives, they settled for field goals, and you can look at that and say that was a detriment in the game. But ultimately, this defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. The Commanders had 6 real offensive drives. They scored on all 6. Only 1 was a field goal. I mean, this was the first game since the 1940s that 2 teams participated in the game, and they had no turnovers and no punts in it. And now teams are 27-1 when the offense doesn't have a punt or a turnover, and they have more than 3+ touchdowns. The 1 loss being the Bengals, the 1 win added to that tally being the Commanders, because both of them had flawless offensive performance. I look at the Bengals offense, and this is one of the best offenses in the NFL. This is the good about the Bengals. They produce the best offensive EPA per drive against the Commanders. They are 4th in EPA per drive. They're 1st in success rate on the season. Joe Burrow's completed 70% of his passes with a 107.5 passer rating, and I think the offense will get better as T. Higgins and Jamar Chase get more into playing shape. The bad is that this defensive line is not good enough, and that was not a surprise. I thought the Bengals defense would be better than bottom of the barrel, but this run defense I knew wasn't going to be good. The only thing that I'm kind of shocked about is that just the previous week before facing the Washington Commanders, they were great defensively against the Kansas City Chiefs. They held Patrick Mahomes to one of his worst performances of his career. Right now, the Bengals are 30th in EPA per play. In week 2, they ranked 7th in EPA per dropback and 4th in success rate. This was a top 10 defense that performed when they faced the Kansas City Chiefs. But against Commanders, it was the worst. They were 32nd in dropback EPA. They were 32nd in success rate. My theory is that alongside the personnel, the Bengals just don't get up for these certain games. But this was the wake-up call that they needed to now take every single game from this point on seriously, regardless of the stature of the team. If it's the Chiefs, if it's the Ravens, if it's the Bills, now's your chance. And they have the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL. You look at who they face: the Panthers, the Browns twice, the Giants, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Titans, the Broncos, and then the hard teams are the Ravens twice, the Steelers twice, the Cowboys, and then the Eagles. I think the Bengals can still win 10 games this year, even though they've put them in this type of hole being 0-3, but I still see a schedule that is very winnable. I see a team that can go on a run. The defensive line probably won't be fixed, but we have to understand that in this game, they didn't have Sheldon Rankins or B.J. Hill. And not that those are huge difference makers, but it's better than having Jay Tufele and then Zach Carter, who those were the guys that they had out there. They had the worst pass rushing performance of the season. They only won on their pass rushes 9.7% of the time, which was the lowest of the year. Outside of Trey Hendrickson, nobody else can win. And Lou Anarumo, somebody that has gotten a lot of praise in the past, from me included, he only blitzed Jaden Daniels 11 times in this game. You look at the pockets that Jaden had to work with, and shout out to him for having the game he had. But, I mean, this was the cleanest pocket that any quarterback could have. That's how laughably bad the Bengals defense was, and they could not get a stop. You look at the last drive that the Commanders had when they iced the game. It was 2nd and 21 after a Hendrickson sack, and they still gave up a first down and didn't give this offense a chance to even answer and come back and win the game. But I look at the Bengals defense, and I look at how they performed week 2, and I look at how they performed week 3, and I think they can at least be a defense that gets a couple stops a game. Are they going to be a team that gets scored on every single drive? I don't think that's going to be the case. I think, that was a one-time thing. Is it going to be a bad defense? Yes. But I think this team's offensive talent, Joe Burrow, how Zach Taylor figures things out late in the season, I think they'll win 10 games and they'll still make the playoffs in the AFC.
That shit's cute. is real cute. You know, the Bengals start off 0-3 and they get a wake up call after losing to the Commanders,
That
who
was supposed to
going
be the
into that
wake-up
game,
call.
you're a touchdown favorite at home. Real nice though. Nice way to spin it. Bengals, that's your guy. Joe Burrow is your guy. So just a wake up call. That's all it is. Reality of the situation. We're talking about the reality. They can still make the playoffs. Like, sure, they can make the playoffs. The schedule is light, right? They have a good quarterback. But we weren't entering this season being like, oh, yeah, Bengals are a playoff team. The Bengals enter every season trying to win a Super Bowl. And they've been the toughest opponent for the Kansas City Chiefs. They showed it in week 2 when they get up for that game. They had the luxury of being able to choose what games to get up for. You know, God forbid you get up for every game. You could be 3-0 right now because you're facing
That's a
New
fact.
England and the Commanders. But we go into the season, this isn't a team that's a playoff team. It's a team that should be competing for a Super Bowl. And right now, they don't look anything close to a Super Bowl team. Offensively, they've been great. Sure, I don't have any problem thinking that they're going to be a great offensive team. Just lost Trent Brown, likely for the season, right? He just had a pretty major knee injury there. The run game, when they have used it, it's been efficient actually. It's been like top 4, top 5 in terms of success rate, but they're 31st in attempts, right? You were in a dogfight in week 2 against KC in the high-scoring game in week 3 where you just didn't get a lot of attempts going. But I also look at your running back room, and it's Zach Moss and it's Chase Brown, who I understand why you're not having a ton of attempts, right?
Chase Brown, kind of nice.
They're okay, but like neither of these guys are guys that, you know, again, strike fear in the heart of defenders. And then the defense, like I said earlier, there's some things we go into the year we could predict. There's some things we couldn't predict. This defense we knew wasn't going to be a strong unit. We had major questions about the run game. Look at what Ramondre Stevenson did in week 1. Pacheco had 90-something yards before he got injured in week 2. In this game, they did a good job shutting it down with Brian Robinson, but then through the air, Jaden Daniels completed 90% of his passes. My quarterback's completing 90% of my passes. I'm not giving the ball to Brian Robinson either. So, I mean, like, I think from Joel's perspective, right? Like, you could sleep good at night because you got the Panthers coming up and you got the Giants coming up, and in a couple of weeks you could be like 4-4 maybe, or 3-4, and you're in the thick of things again. But Joe Burrow is not out here to win one playoff game. Like, Joe Burrow, you get bounced in the first round, we're saying, like, this is the top 5 quarterback. You get bounced in the first round. Like, this isn't what Mahomes is doing. This isn't what Josh is like. It's just the conversation that's going to be had. So in September, it's like, don't worry, they'll turn it around. They can still do it. But in reality, like, that's not my expectation for them. They've regressed. They're not the team I thought they were.
Well, for one, if the Bengals make the playoffs and they lose, and it's not because of Joe Burrow, because of defense, and Joe Burrow's fine. We know that this is a team sport. We know that defense matters. And the top quarterbacks, usually that go on runs, they have a complete team.
But we knew this defense was going to be bad, and we still said they'll be fine.
This defense had some pieces, and
Trey Hendricks
you're right.
came to the break.
The run defense I knew was going to be bad. I didn't think the run defense would be good, but the pass defense definitely had some optimism when you brought in Geno Stone, you brought in Von Bell back, and Jordan Battle last year, the rookie safety, played really well. He hasn't played the last 2 games. He's just not even out there anymore. And really what this has been more than anything has been an organizational failure. And I don't want to I'm gonna go here because Joe Burrow might be becoming Justin Herbert with the way the organization is building around him. Because you look at how the Chiefs have successfully built around Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Through the draft, they have drafted corners, they have let their high-priced free agents walk, and they have been able to get that talent back. They drafted Creed Humphrey. They drafted Leo Chanel. They rebuilt their entire offensive line in one draft with Trey Smith. And then they also signed Joe Thuney. The disadvantage that the Bengals are at right now is that their owner is cheap, and he doesn't like to spend any money. That's why T. Higgins is on the franchise tag. That's why Jamar Chase hasn't gotten his contract yet. That's why DJ Reader walked when he just wanted $12 million per year, and instead they gave it to Sam Hubbard. They gave Sam Hubbard $10 million, and he's been one of the worst edge rushers in the NFL at pass rushing, run stopping, which was his forte. He has completely regressed. It's why they didn't pay Jesse Bates. It's because the ownership has been cheap. And Jesse Bates, we now see, goes to Atlanta. The Falcons aren't loaded with this defensive personnel.
Their secondary is crazy,
Jesse
though.
Bates just makes up for a lot of things. And now we're seeing that missing piece with the Bengals. And you look at the draft. When you lose Jesse Bates, when you lose DJ Reader, you're supposed to replace these guys in the draft, especially when your quarterback starts making a lot of money. We look at the Bengals offensive line and defensive line draft picks in the 2021 and 2022 drafts. Jackson Carman, Joseph Asai, Cam Sample, Tyler Shelvin, Deontay Smith, Trey Hill, Wyatt Hubert, Zach Carter, Cordell Volson, Jeff Gunter. There's one starter. It's Cordell Volson, and he is a below average starter. The other misses. They drafted Dax Hill to replace Jesse Bates. He had to convert from safety to corner because he couldn't tackle. You also have Miles Murphy, an edge rusher that they brought in, that he's on IR right now, but last year as a rookie, he didn't play well. Jordan Battle had a promising rookie season, but this year he hasn't played. And then DJ Turner, who they drafted in the second round, who was a speed guy who hasn't been good, and he is not even getting snaps on the field. Dax Hill is playing over him. So this entire drafting strategy for the Bengals has been abysmal. All of the players they have lost in free agency, they have not been able to successfully replace with good players through the draft. And because the ownership is cheap, they don't sign any free agents at all. So this is why the defense has gotten so bad. And the fact that Mike Brown, who's their owner, the fact that he hasn't paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, when the Bengals aren't paying anybody on this roster, is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. You look at the Bengals payroll, they don't pay nobody. Look at the Eagles. Look at
everybody.
Look at Howie Roseman. You paid Jalen Hurts. You paid AJ Brown.
Smitty.
You paid Devontae Smith. You went out and signed Bryce Huff in free agency. Saquon Barkley. You brought him in.
Bag. Shit,
Slay got his extension.
They're spending
Everyone
money.
gets paid.
literally everyone gets paid over there.
You look at the draft: Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter. They're drafting well and they're rebuilding their team. That's how you build a roster around a quarterback.
I mean, the whole
Jordan
offensive
Mailata.
line essentially.
And the Bengals, when you look at the number one thing you have to look at when you look at why this team got where they got to, is organizational failure top to bottom. They don't sign free agents and they don't draft well.
Drew, before you go, just quickly, they play Carolina next week. You predict that to win.
Yep.
So they're 1-3. Then you got Baltimore,
Loss.
1-4. Please keep track. Please.
I'm here.
Then you got the Giants.
Win.
Then Cleveland, at Cleveland.
Win.
Philly, be serious.
Loss.
There we go. Raiders,
Win.
Baltimore, at Baltimore. It's not looking too good. It might be a sweep.
I think they could split with them.
This would be the one they win.
I will go loss here.
Okay.
4-6.
At the Chargers. We don't know what Herbert's
Win.
status.
5-6.
So going into the bye, you're 5-6, and then your next 5 is Pitt, Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, Pittsburgh. Teams that are probably gonna be competitive towards the
This
end
is
of
a
the year.
strong 9-8 team.
That's being generous. They could win.
I think they're winning 10 games.
Woo. Okay.
I think they beat Dallas.
They have to take both from Cleveland.
I think they
realistically.
yes, and then split with the Steelers once.
Yes.
I think they beat Dallas. I think they beat Tennessee. I think they beat Denver. Yeah, I mean, right now,
Is it an easy game versus us?
No, I don't think anything moving forward is not an easy game for the Bengals.
fuck
They
them.
got to get up for every single game.
If they lose next
They
week,
might
it's
lose
over.
against the Panthers. Yes, exactly. They could lose against the Panthers.
But right now, we're in a situation with the Bengals have to be absolutely perfect from this point moving forward.
don't
There's
know-
no more messing around,
I don't know if I would
especially
compare
defensively.
it to Herbert though. Herbert's never had a Jamar Chase. He's never had a even. Well, no, let me not say that. He's had like a T Higgins, but bringing in Jamar Chase and then you had T Higgins. I get it. The defense they haven't been able to replicate the Chiefs. Not many teams have, to be honest, but they haven't been able to draft properly. They haven't been able to bring free agents in, but you still have a pretty substantial defensive coordinator. You still have a great offense. I don't know. It's a tricky thing to compare to Herbert. I feel like Herbert's in kind of a one of one
he
situation.
had Brendan Staley too.
Yeah.
Well, the difference right now is that Justin Herbert, because Jim Harbaugh is now with the Chargers, they're on
Yeah,
an
he just
upward
got-
trajectory.